this latest poll showing Trump v. Biden and this NBC poll. I just want to tell you something. So NBC's been polling Trump v. Biden for years now, at least since 2019, to see how they do. This is when Trump was still president. October 2019, Biden +9. August 2020, Biden +9. October 2020, a month before Election Day, Biden +14. June 2023, now we're well into the Biden presidency, Biden +4. November 2023, this past November, Trump +2. January 2024, Trump +5. That's where we are today. Trump +5. And the reasons are the economy. Trump has a +22 percentage point margin over Biden, 55 to 33. Note that poll was taken amidst positive economic reports, including consumer confidence up and the 300,000 jobs created last month. So it was taken during and after that. The border, Trump +35. Crime, Trump +21. These numbers are absolutely devastating. And if nothing else changes between now and next November, Trump will win the election, Kmele.
Yeah, I mean, Democrats really have to be kicking themselves at this point. I mean, I'm trying to understand how you get to the point where Joe Biden is going to be your guy again for another go round, considering his age, but also just considering the perception of this particular presidency, which is, I think, generally regarded as a bit feckless on the issues that matter. We just talked about immigration. A lot of the American people are simply not satisfied with what's happening. Democrats are not satisfied with what's happening when they think about the person who's likely to succeed him if something were to happen to him while he's in office. And given the age of these two candidates, it's not an impossibility. No one is particularly impressed with her. There was a period of time here where they might have been able to find someone different. They didn't do that and now appear to be completely stuck with a candidate that cannot move the needle, even when the news seems to be moving in his particular direction. And just given the vicissitudes of the election, I have to suspect that this is probably going to get worse for the Biden administration in a lot of ways. And I think if it were anyone but Trump that he were up against, he might have an even more difficult go. The reality, however, is that Donald Trump has his own pretty dicey situation from a legal standpoint and various other ways that may, in fact, come in and take away the advantage that I suspect plenty of other Republican candidates might have versus this particular White House.
He has his own dicey situation. You are the master of understatement, my friend. Thank you. Very well done. He's got a few dicey situations over there, Trump does. It is interesting. Once again, Haley polls better than Trump versus Biden. She's up 9 over Biden, 45 for Haley, 36 for Biden, and Trump's up, as I said, 5 over Biden. But that doesn't get you very far if Republicans don't want you. You gotta.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah, you got to be able to talk the language that the base is going to understand. And Republicans have, at this point, made it pretty clear that they prefer Donald Trump to anyone else who's been out in the field. And if that's where it is, there's not a great deal that you can do about that. Again, unless something changes so profoundly that he simply cannot run.
Okay, and it might. I mean, let's be honest, with Biden, that really is potentially true. And even with Trump, that is both men, it's potentially true. So, Inez, these percentage point advantages on the economy, on immigration, on crime are huge. I mean, double digits is it's at the border +35. +35, it's 57 to 22 in terms of the approval ratings for these two men. And the border, as we just discussed, is moving up in importance with Democrats too, and independents too. It's always been 1 or 2 with Republicans, pretty much always second to the economy. And in some instances, now we're seeing number 1. So my feeling is, because I say in that last question, if nothing else changes, Trump's going to win. Okay, that's nice, but we're 9 months out now and things do change in an election year. However, this much, the economy, even with the better numbers we're getting, you think it's going to change so much that he's going to close a 22 percentage point gap, that he's going to close a 35 percentage point gap on the border, thanks to a deal that we all know is not happening, right? Like, it just, to me today, it feels insurmountable.
Yeah, and that's really all we can do. As you point out, we can't predict black swan events. But I think Trump has a really good case, and that case is, were you better off in 2019 than you are now? laying aside the pandemic, 2020, I mean, and the rioting in 2020, January 6th, all of those things, right? But for the first 3 years of his administration, people made more money. And for the first time, we saw that boom actually, extend to blue collar Americans, right, to working class Americans. He has a really good case. He actually did start to address the totally open border. Although, again, I'll point out from the last segment, there was a limited amount that even the Trump administration could do because our system itself is so broken and has been so broken for decades. But that's really the fundamental Trump case. And I think it goes up against the fundamental Biden case, which I think is just way weaker this time around than it was in 2020. Because in 2020, as much as, those of us who have followed Joe Biden over a longer period of time and thought that it was a crazy case to make, he was supposed to be the adult in the room, right? His case was, let's return to normalcy. Well, looking back over the Joe Biden presidency for the last 3 years, it's really hard to do. You can say a lot of things about the Joe Biden presidency, but it has not been a return to normalcy. And I feel like that actually strikes at the heart of his case, much more than what Camille called diciness strikes at the heart of Trump's.
You know what, though? I have to challenge you on the fact that, the suggestion that no president has really done much. Donald Trump, yes, he could have done more because he controlled both houses of Congress and the White House. But in 2020, it was something like 400,000 came into the country illegally, the encounters. 400. Now we're at almost 3 million. It's absurd. Like, there actually are a lot of things you can do, and that he did. Could he have done more? Yes. Could we have a wall? Hello? Yes. People have been pointing out the wall in Egypt. It's beautiful. It's the thing Trump led people to believe that we were going to have here that we don't. So he does deserve credit for what he did on this issue. He didn't do it as perfectly as he could have or as well as he could have. Just ask Ann Coulter. But it's not fair to say he's the same as W or Biden or anybody, other than himself. Stephen Miller's the guy.
Yeah, my critique is not actually of how the Trump administration handled the border. I think they used the executive powers that they had within the range of what they could do. But my point is rather that we have decades of bad law in the immigration system. Our asylum law actually does need to be reformed. We need to actually fund some of these structures that are designed to process people. Yes, the Congress has to fund the wall, right? We had that huge fight in the Trump administration as to whether or not he could move monies from, other pots. There's only so much the executive can do. And now, yes, we can see the difference now between an executive who wants to use all of the limited tools he has to try to slow down these crossings at the border, these legal immigration crossings at the border, and we send between an administration that clearly doesn't want to do that, is in fact going to go so far as to go down in Texas and actually cut razor wire in order to prevent Texas from stopping people from coming across that border. So I'm not downplaying that difference at all. All I'm saying is that this is not a new issue, and there are structural legal reasons why the U.S. immigration system has provided the incentives around the world that it has, and no single administration right now. Even Donald Trump, who nobody could accuse Donald Trump of not wanting to enforce the border. But even under him, yes, the crisis was lesser, but don't forget, we had those caravans under Donald Trump. We had, millions of border crossings under the Trump administration. So yes, it was better because he did the best he could with the tools in front of him. But that's really what I want to highlight is immigration in this country has been broken for decades, and it does require a seriousness about the most basic thing of
Biden came
sovereignty.
in, Biden had control of both houses in the White House. Trump had control of both houses in the White House. They didn't do it. They did, there could be a law passed. There could be more funding for asylum, claims to be processed. It's all bullshit because most of the asylum seekers are not seeking asylum. It's a lie. They could have sought asylum in Mexico. They went right through Mexico because they want to be here. They want to go to Lowe's Theater and watch our movies. They don't want to actually assimilate a lot of them, but they want their government check. They want, a driver's license. They want to do all the things that American citizens do without doing any of the things that people who immigrated here legally and jumped through all the hoops had to do. It's not about bullshit asylum claims, except for a very small number. And those people should be processed, and we should figure out who genuinely needs our help and shares our values, but we don't do any of that. And now they want to give Mayorkas a magic wand to say, I deem ye asylum seekers, welcome to America. That's not how it works. Okay, pausing there. Protecting democracy, Biden now with just a +2 percentage point margin. Now, what's interesting about this is there are some Republicans who care about this issue for sure. But this is a Democrat issue, Kmele. You know, protecting democracy. And the Democrats were winning thanks to Jan 6th. Like they were winning, and they were winning big on this issue. As recently as the summer of 2021 and summer of 2022, I remember like following it in the summers. And I would submit to you that the reason it's now almost tied is the criminal prosecutions against Trump.
I think that's entirely possible. It's certainly, for me, one of the things that I find most striking about the present moment. When you hear people say openly, you know, if Donald Trump wins, he's going to use the Justice Department to go after his political enemies. And I think to myself, you know, it's kind of odd, but the guy is facing multiple criminal prosecutions, some of which are far more dubious than others. I think the documents case in Florida, for example, is disconcerting for him and probably the most difficult one that he faces. But a lot of these other things, the odd case in New York where he is apparently being prosecuted for defrauding companies that he actually paid back the money on time because the paperwork isn't quite the way it ought to have been.
Like, yeah, that's a civil matter, but like outrageous.
Openly political. It's very hard, I think, for anyone who takes democracy seriously, for anyone who takes the rule of law very seriously and expects impartiality with respect to the way that justice is delivered, to look at this and say, oh yeah, this is totally above board. This is completely fine. I think Donald Trump as a president, perhaps as a human, has plenty of defects and things that are worth being concerned about. Had he been a bit more careful, almost certainly wouldn't be facing some of these prosecutions. But others, on the other hand, like are far more dubious. And I do think it weakens your overall case if you want to talk about the protecting democracy, whatever that means, as your fundamental case against the opponent. It's a bit hard to do against that backdrop. And I don't know how many Americans are keying into that, but it's certainly not something that's lost on me.
That's the irony, Inez, is obviously they've tried to get him bounced off of several ballots as well. We talk about depriving democracy, right? That's failing, and it's going to go up to the Supreme Court, and it's going to remain a total failure, is my prediction, once the Supreme Court has the final say on these nonsense efforts to get him booted because of insurrection. But the irony of this whole thing is that the Democrats, in order to bring political advantage to what he did on J6 and leading up to J6 and denying that he had lost, are themselves compromising their democratic principles in doing things we've never done before by going after someone criminally, trying to get them bounced off the ballot, you know, in a way that we've never done before in the history of the union. All those things undermine them as the democratic champions, while they try desperately to bring attention to what they think is a good electoral issue for them, which is his undermining of democracy. It's a kamikaze mission.
In so many ways, that's the story of Donald Trump all the way back from 2015, right? It is this response from the supposedly the institutional mechanisms of democracy in which Americans once had a lot more trust than they do.
Sorting through your expense tracking, estimated payments, and all those deductions is overwhelming. It might lead to a failure to file or failure to pay penalties that pile up on your tax debt. Here's an idea. The attorneys at Tax Network USA have been lifesavers for many. Their team has successfully saved clients over $1 billion in tax debts. Whether you're in the hole for $10,000 or staring at a $10 million debt, they are ready to help. Even if you haven't filed in 1, 5, or 10 years, the expert attorneys and tax pros at Tax Network USA are equipped to secure the best settlement for you and to help you resolve all tax cases no matter how they started. Go to tnusa.com/Megyn. tnusa.com/Megyn, or call 1-800-245-6000. Contact them now, as these tax debt relief programs are expected to change. tnusa.com/Megyn, or call 1-800-245-6000 and tell them Megyn Kelly sent you. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.